We're now joined by Louise Elliot, President of the Tasmanian Residential Rental Property Owners Association. Thanks for joining us, Louise. Now, there's been lots of talk about rent control of late. How is that impacting confidence in the sector?
That's right. There is a lot of talk of rent control. There's also word of pressure about removing owners' rights as to whether they accept or decline animals in their property, which brings an inherent risk with them. And we also have talk about removing the ability to end a lease when it's run its course, removing fixed-term leases. So those that messaging and those sort of threats that are out there, they're having a big impact on investors' confidence and their willingness to invest in a market where prices are really high.
Because we're seeing not a lot of investors actually willing to then rent out the properties they're buying.
That's true, yes. And also there's some really disturbing stats coming out as well. The Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute came out with a report only in the last week or two stating worryingly that 9% of landlords are actually intending to sell. That's a really big figure. When you look at Tasmania, that equates to around 3,600 houses, which will be potentially coming up for sale over the course of however long. And the lending stats coming out from the REIT and also from the Australian Bureau of Statistics show that around 20% of those only 20% of those will stay as investment properties. The rest will transform over to owner-occupiers. So at a time when every rental is precious, that's really can be bad news, not only for owners, because that's an investment class kind of that they're turning away from, but also for tenants, because less rentals obviously means more competition, higher rental prices. So it's a worrying time. Those policies that we spoke about before are certainly making it worse, both sides of the equation in tenancies.
So the removal of this fixed term lease, what are the impacts of that?
Well, at the moment, you have a fixed term lease and you have an ongoing lease. It's very common for people to do a fixed term lease of, say, 12 months because the owner wants to have a decision point of whether they continue that or take another fork in the road. So it's actually literally getting rid of a fixed term lease. So there's only be a finite number of reasons that you can end a tenancy on. And that can instill a lot of nervousness in owners, knowing that your options for getting your property back under your access are really limited. So all of these factors which take away inherent rights from owners and disincentivise rental ownership are hurting not only owners but tenants too. And what we need to really focus on is treating the cause of the problem, not the symptom, symptoms being things like high rent. We need to treat the cause through new build and new supply.
So one thing that I am interested in is allowing pets or making it allowable for anyone to have a pet in a house. Obviously, you'd like to think people respect properties, but perhaps that's not the case.
It isn't universally the case, no. And most of us love animals. There's no doubt about that. But there are inherent risks that come, additional risks that come when you have animals on a property that wouldn't be there if they weren't otherwise. And for many owners, that risk's too high. Some are okay with it, but the decision as to whether you accept animals or not should absolutely rest with the owner. I mean, it's not uncommon to have, dog scratching is the most common one that comes to mind, and that can be big damage. And urine in carpets and things like this. And these are repairs and damage which trump the value of a rental bond. So that's all decisions that have to be factored in when you take on the risk of ownership. And like I said, for many, that's just too much.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today, Louise.
Thank you.